Caleb Montgomery's frozen fingers couldn't grip the doorframe anymore. He collapsed face first into the snow 3 feet from his own cabin, the blood from his torn leg leaving a crimson trail behind him. Inside, he could hear his baby screaming. His 7 children were alone. They'd been alone for 2 days while he crawled 5 miles through the blizzard with a broken bone piercing through his skin. "God," he whispered into the ice, "don't let them watch me die." That's when he heard her voice, a stranger's voice coming from inside his home. If you want to see how one woman's courage saved this desperate family, subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Comment your city below so we can see how far this story travels. Caleb Montgomery's broken shin bone scraped against frozen earth as he dragged himself toward home. 5 miles behind him, his horse lay dead in a ravine. 5 miles of blood trail marked his path through the snow. 30 feet to his cabin door. His children were inside, 7 of them, alone. "Move!" He clawed forward. "Move, damn you!" His fingers had stopped working 2 miles back. Frostbite, probably. Didn't matter. Nothing mattered except reaching that door. Baby Catherine's scream cut through the wind. 6 months old and wailing like she'd been crying for days. Something was wrong. Thomas knew to watch for him. Thomas was 10, old enough to keep the fire going, old enough to feed the little ones. But no smoke rose from the chimney. No small face appeared at the window. 3 days. He'd been gone 3 days instead of 2. "Thomas?" His voice came out as a croak. "Son?" Nothing. Caleb's elbow struck a rock beneath the snow. Pain shot up his arm, but he kept crawling. 20 feet. 15. His broken leg dragged behind him, the bone grinding with every inch. The door opened. A woman stood there. Not Martha. Martha was dead, buried on the hill where she could watch the sunrise. This woman was a stranger with wild auburn hair and green eyes that went wide when she saw him. "Dear God." She ran to him, dropping to her knees in the snow. "Sir, can you hear me?" Caleb grabbed her wrist. "Who the hell are you? Where's my son?" "Inside. All 7 of your children are inside." Her hands moved to his leg and she sucked in a breath. "This bone is through the skin. How far did you crawl?" 5 miles. "Where's Thomas?" Keeping the others calm. "Sir, I need to—" "How did you get in my house?" "Your door was unlocked, your children were starving, and there's a dead woman in your storage room." Her voice didn't waver. "Now shut up and let me help you before you bleed out in your own yard." She hauled him up before he could argue. Strong for her size, she took most of his weight against her hip and half-carried him toward the door. "Thomas," she called. "I need you. Now." The door flew open wider. Thomas stood there with a rifle in his shaking hands. Tear tracks dried on his face. "Pa!" He dropped the gun and rushed forward. "Pa, I'm sorry Mrs. Perkins died, and I didn't know what to do. I tried to ride for help, but the horse wouldn't. Agatha's dead. 3 days ago, right after you left. Her heart just stopped." They got him through the door, and Caleb's chest seized at what he saw. All 7 of his children huddled near a dead fireplace. Elizabeth, 8 years old, clutched baby Catherine against her chest, trying to warm the infant with her own body. The twins, Samuel and Grace, sat pressed together, shivering hard. Benjamin had his face buried against Hannah's shoulder, and 4-year-old Hannah was humming Martha's lullaby through chattering teeth. They looked up, 7 faces, hollow cheeks, cracked lips, eyes too big and too thin faces. "Papa!" Grace broke from the group and ran toward him. The woman caught her. "Careful, sweetheart. Your papa's hurt bad. Can you be brave for me?" Grace nodded, tears spilling. "Good girl. Go sit with your sister. I'll bring your papa to you soon as I fix him up." They got Caleb onto the bed. The woman was already cutting away his blood-soaked pants with a knife from her boot. "This needs setting," she said. "You got whiskey." Cabinet. Above the stove. She found it and came back. I'm going to clean this, then set the bone. It'll hurt worse than anything you've felt. Just do it. Thomas. She didn't look up. Get the fire started. There's dry kindling in my wagon outside, and bring the canvas bag under the seat. Thomas ran. The woman poured whiskey over the wound. Caleb bit through his lip to keep from screaming. I'm Clara Whitmore, she said, working fast. My wagon threw a wheel about a mile from here, came looking for help, and found your children alone with a corpse and an empty food cellar. How long? He gasped as she probed the wound. How long were they alone? From what Thomas told me, 3 days. He kept them alive, rationed the last of the flour, melted snow for water, sang to the baby when she wouldn't stop crying. She looked at him. Your boy's a hero, Mr. Montgomery. He was pointing a rifle at my chest when I walked through that door. Pride and guilt hit Caleb at the same time. His 10-year-old son defending his siblings with a gun he could barely lift. I'm going to set this now. Clara positioned her hands. Bite down. She moved before he was ready. The bone ground back into place, and Caleb's vision went white. When he could see again, cold sweat drenched his face, and Clara was binding his leg to a splint. Done. She wiped her hands. You'll live. But you won't walk on this for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Caleb tried to sit up. I can't, the horses, the cattle, the children. Will be handled. She pushed him back down. Right now, you rest. You don't understand. I've got no one. No family. No hands. I can't be off my feet for... Papa! Hannah had crept to the bedside. Her brown eyes were huge in her thin face. Papa, are you gonna die like Mama did? The question broke something in Caleb's chest. He reached out, touching her cheek with fingers he still couldn't feel. No, baby girl. Papa's not dying. Promise? I promise. Hannah looked at Clara. Are you gonna stay? You gave us bread. You made Catherine stop crying. Clara knelt to Hannah's level. I'm going to stay until your papa's better. Is that all right with you? Hannah nodded. Then she leaned close and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Thomas was real scared. He pretended he wasn't, but he was. I could tell 'cause he kept checking the window. Hannah. Thomas had returned with the kindling, his face red. You weren't supposed to say that. But it's true. Don't matter if it's true. A man don't talk about being scared. Clara stood, taking the kindling from him. A man who protects his family for 3 days with no help has earned the right to be scared, Thomas. There's no shame in it. Thomas stared at her. Something flickered across his face. Surprise maybe that an adult had said that to him. He didn't answer, just went to build the fire. Within an hour, the cabin had transformed. Fire crackled in the hearth. A pot of stew bubbled on the stove. Clara had slaughtered one of the chickens, working fast and efficient while the children watched. Who taught you to do that? Samuel asked, his eyes wide. Kill a chicken, I mean. My father. He believed everyone should know how to feed themselves. Was he a farmer? A doctor, but he grew up poor, said he never wanted to forget where he came from. Grace tugged at Clara's sleeve. Miss Clara, Mama used to braid my hair every morning. Thomas tried, but he made knots. I did not, Thomas said from across the room. You did too, big ones. Clara smiled. I'll braid it for you after supper. Would you like that? Grace nodded, then looked at her twin. See, Samuel, I told you she was nice. I never said she wasn't. You said she might be a witch. I said she might be. That's different from saying she is. Children. Caleb's voice was weak but firm. Miss Whitmore is a guest. You'll treat her with respect. She ain't a guest if she's staying, Benjamin said. He was 5 with Martha's stubborn chin. Guests leave. She's staying. That makes her something else. What does it make her? Elizabeth asked. Benjamin shrugged. Dunno, but something. Clara ladled stew into bowls. It makes me someone who's going to feed you supper and expect you to eat every bite. How's that? That works, Benjamin said, and grabbed his bowl. Caleb watched them eat. Really eat, not the polite nibbles of children who'd been taught manners, but the desperate shoveling of kids who hadn't had a real meal in days. His stomach turned with guilt. Clara brought him a bowl. You need to eat too. I'm not hungry. I didn't ask if you were hungry. I said you need to eat. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding the bowl where he could reach it. Your children have been through hell, Mr. Montgomery. They need their father alive and strong. That means you eat. He took the bowl. The stew was good, better than anything he'd managed since Martha died. How'd you learn to cook like this? Practice and necessity. She watched the children, her expression unreadable. When you've got nothing, you learn to make something out of whatever's available. You mentioned Philadelphia, running away from something. Her jaw tightened. I mentioned that, yes. Care to elaborate? Not particularly. You're in my home, with my children. I think I've got a right to know who you are. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she set down the ladle and faced him. I was a teacher, engaged to a man I thought I knew. 3 days before our wedding, I found out he had a wife and 2 children in New York. Her voice was flat controlled. When I confronted him, he called me hysterical, had me dismissed from my position, told everyone I was unstable, delusional, making up stories for attention. Son of a bitch. Yes, he was. She met Caleb's eyes. So I took what money I had and bought a ticket west. Been traveling 6 weeks. I've got $12 left and no plan beyond surviving the next day. A pause. Is that enough truth for you, Mr. Montgomery? Or would you like to know my shoe size as well? Despite everything, Caleb almost smiled. Caleb, if you're going to stay in my house, you might as well use my name. Caleb, then. She stood smoothing her skirts. Now finish your stew. I need to get the children settled for bed. He watched her work. She moved through his home like she belonged there, directing the children with quiet authority. Elizabeth helped wash the dishes. Thomas brought in more firewood without being asked. The twins cleared the table while Hannah held baby Catherine singing softly. Benjamin tugged at Clara's hand. Miss Clara, will you tell us a story? What kind of story? A good one, with heroes and stuff. Mama used to tell us stories. Clara glanced at Caleb. He nodded. She gathered the children near the fire. Catherine was already asleep in Elizabeth's arms. The others sat in a half-circle waiting. Once upon a time, Clara began, there was a family that lived in a cabin in the mountains. They didn't have much, just each other, and a whole lot of love. But that was enough because love is stronger than money or fancy things. Did they have a papa? Hannah asked. They did. A strong, brave papa who worked hard every day to take care of them. Did they have a mama? Clara hesitated. They had a mama once, but she went to heaven to watch over them from the sky. Thomas made a sound, not quite a word, but something raw and hurt. He got up and walked to the window, his back to the room. So the children missed their mama very much, Clara continued softly. But they knew she was still with them. Every time the wind blew, that was her singing to them. Every time the sun came out, that was her smiling. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. Is that true about Mama? I think it is. I think the people we love never really leave us. They just find new ways to stay close. Grace crawled into Clara's lap. I like that story. Me too, Samuel said. He paused. Even if Thomas doesn't. I never said I didn't like it, Thomas said without turning around. You walked away. That don't mean I didn't like it. Just means I needed to think. Clara watched him, his rigid shoulders, his clenched fists. Thomas, you all right? Fine. You sure? He turned. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. I'm sure. Thank you for the story, Miss Whitmore. It was nice. The word cost him. Caleb could see it. Clara nodded. You're welcome. Now I think it's time for bed. Long day tomorrow. She got them settled with an efficiency that surprised Caleb. Within 20 minutes, all 7 children were in their beds. The older ones in the small room they shared. Baby Catherine in her cradle by the fire where Clara could watch her. You're good with them, Caleb said when she finally sat down. They're good children. Makes it easy. They haven't been easy since Martha died. They've been lost. Grief does that. Clara picked up some mending she'd found earlier. Makes you feel like you're drowning even when you're standing on solid ground. You sound like you know. I told you, my fiancé destroyed my life. Not quite the same as losing a wife, but... She shrugged. Loss is loss. It all hurts. Caleb was quiet for a moment. I need to ask you something. Ask. Why did you stay? You could have kept walking. Found another farm. Someone who could actually pay you for help. Clara's hands stilled on the mending. When I walked through that door and saw those children, saw Thomas trying so hard to be brave, saw Hannah singing to keep everyone calm, saw that baby crying with no one to comfort her. She shook her head. I couldn't leave. Even if I'd wanted to, I couldn't. Most people would have. Then most people are cowards. She resumed her stitching. Those are 7 children who needed help. What kind of person walks away from that? A practical one. Then I'm not practical. She looked at him. And neither are you. You crawled 5 miles on a broken leg to get back to them. Don't talk to me about practical. Caleb had no answer for that. The next 3 days passed in a blur of healing and adaptation. Clara ran the household with an iron will wrapped in velvet. Meals appeared on time. Clothes got mended. The cabin, which had been slowly falling into chaos since Martha's death, became organized and clean. The children responded like flowers after rain. Benjamin stopped hiding behind his siblings and started asking Clara questions non-stop. Grace followed her everywhere, chattering about anything and everything. Samuel, quieter than his twin, showed his affection by bringing Clara small gifts, pretty rocks, a bird feather, a piece of wood shaped like a heart. Elizabeth relaxed into being a child again instead of a substitute mother. She laughed more, played with her siblings instead of watching them. Let Clara handle the baby instead of insisting she could do it herself. Even baby Catherine seemed different, less fussy, more content sleeping through the night for the first time in months. Only Thomas held back. He did his chores, answered when spoken to, but kept a wall between himself and Clara that she couldn't seem to breach. Give him time, Caleb said on the 3rd evening. They were alone, the children asleep, the fire burning low. He was closest to Martha. He thinks trusting you means betraying her. I know. Clara's voice was soft. I'm not trying to replace his mother. He doesn't understand that yet. Will he eventually? Caleb wanted to say yes. Wanted to promise that Thomas would come around, that everything would be fine. But he'd learned not to make promises he couldn't keep. I don't know, he said honestly. Thomas has got a lot of Martha in him. Stubborn as a mule and twice as proud. But he's also got her heart. He'll do the right thing eventually. Just might take him a while to figure out what that is. Clara nodded. I can be patient. How patient? She looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, you said until spring. But spring's 5 months away, and you've got $12 and no plan. He hesitated. Seems to me you might be looking for something more permanent. I'm not looking to marry you if that's what you're asking. I wasn't asking that. Good. Because I've had my fill of men who make promises they don't intend to keep. The words hung between them, sharp and honest and painful. Fair enough, Caleb said. But I'm asking what you want, not what you don't want. Clara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I want to matter. I want to be useful. I want to go to sleep at night knowing that someone's life is better because I was in it. She stared into the fire. I had that in Philadelphia before everything fell apart. I was a good teacher. My students learned. Their parents trusted me. I mattered. A pause. I haven't mattered to anyone since. You matter to those children. I've known them 3 days. Doesn't change the truth. Caleb pushed himself up on his elbows. Hannah asked me this morning if you were going to stay forever. Benjamin told me he wants you to teach him to read like you're teaching the twins. Grace made you a picture of our family and drew you in it. Clara's eyes glistened. She did? 6 stick figures and a baby. You're the one with the orange hair. A wet laugh escaped her. It's auburn, not orange. Tell that to Grace. They smiled at each other, and something shifted, not the dramatic shift of romantic stories, but something quieter, an understanding, a recognition. I should check on the baby, Clara said, standing abruptly. Clara, she paused. Thank you, for everything. You're welcome, Caleb. She didn't turn around. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Why's that? Because I need to ride into town. We're running low on supplies and I want to send a letter to have my wagon repaired. Take Thomas with you. He knows the way. Now she did turn. You want me to take Thomas? He needs time away from here. Time to be a boy instead of a substitute parent. Caleb met her eyes. And time to decide how he feels about you without his siblings watching. Clara studied him for a long moment. That's thoughtful. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. Just... She shook her head. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A broken man drowning in grief and too proud to accept help. I am that. No. Her voice was firm. You're a father fighting for his children. There's a difference. She left before he could respond. Morning came cold and bright. The storm had broken overnight, leaving the world buried in white, but the sky crystal clear. Clara prepared for the journey, while Thomas watched with wary eyes. Why do I have to go? He asked. Because I don't know the way, and you do. Clara tightened the saddle on Caleb's gentlest horse. And because your father thinks you could use a break from responsibility. I don't need a break. Everyone needs a break sometimes, Thomas. Not me. Clara stopped and faced him. 3 days. You kept your brothers and sisters alive for 3 days with no adult help and a dead woman in the next room. You rationed food, melted snow, kept the fire going as long as you could, and comforted a screaming baby even when you were terrified yourself. Her voice was steady. You're 10 years old. You shouldn't have had to do any of that. Thomas's jaw tightened. Someone had to. Yes, someone did. And you did it. But now you don't have to anymore. She put a hand on his shoulder. Let me help, please. For a moment she thought he might cry. His lip trembled. His eyes went bright. Then the wall came back up. We should go, he said. It's a 3-hour ride. Clara nodded. She didn't push. They rode in silence for the first hour. The snow was deep but packed, and the horse moved steadily through it. Thomas sat behind Clara, his arms wrapped around her waist out of necessity, his body rigid. It's pretty out here, Clara said finally. I can see why your family settled in Montana. Pa says the land's good for horses, and Mama loved the mountains. She did. Yeah. She used to say they made her feel close to God. Thomas paused. That's why Pa buried her on the hill, so she could see them forever. Clara's throat tightened. That's beautiful. I guess. More silence. Then, Miss Whitmore. Yes. You really got left by your fiancé. I did. That's rough? It was. Do you hate him? Clara considered the question. I did for a while. Now I mostly feel tired when I think about him. tired and sad. Sad for him? Sad for me, for the life I thought I was going to have. She guided the horse around a fallen tree. But I'm starting to think maybe that life wouldn't have made me happy anyway. Maybe losing it was the best thing that could have happened. That's a strange way to think about it. Maybe. But sometimes the worst things lead us to the best places. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly, she almost missed it. I hope so. Prosperity appeared over the next ridge, a small town of maybe 50 buildings, huddled together against the mountain cold. Clara felt Thomas tense behind her. What is it? Nothing. Thomas. He sighed. There's a man in town, Mr. Garrett. He owns the bank. He's been wanting Pa's land ever since Mama died. Wanting it, how? Pa owes him money. Took out a loan last year to buy more horses and the horses got sick. Most of them died. Pa's been trying to pay it back, but... Thomas trailed off. Mr. Garrett keeps saying Pa's gonna lose the farm. Says it's only a matter of time. Clara's stomach dropped. How much does your father owe? I don't know. A lot. He won't tell me exactly. And this Mr. Garrett, is he a fair man? Thomas's silence was answer enough. They rode into town, Clara's mind racing. A debt-ridden widower with 7 children and a broken leg. A banker circling like a vulture. And her, a disgraced teacher with $12 and no legal standing. This was worse than she'd thought. The general store was easy enough to find. Clara tied up the horse and helped Thomas down. Stay close to me, she said. Why? Just stay close. They'd barely entered the store when a voice called out behind them. Well, well, Thomas Montgomery. Clara turned. A man stood in the doorway, tall, well-dressed with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him, 2 men in work clothes waited like guard dogs. Mr. Garrett, Thomas said. His voice was flat. I heard your father had an accident. Terrible thing. Just terrible. Garrett's eyes moved to Clara, raking over her with undisguised interest. And who might this be? Don't tell me Caleb found himself a new wife already. Martha's barely cold in her grave. Clara felt her spine stiffen. I'm Miss Clara Whitmore, a friend of the family. A friend. Garrett's smile widened. How convenient. Montgomery's been without a woman for 2 years now. Must be lonely out there with all those children. Pa's doing fine, Thomas said. We don't need nothing from you. Anything, Clara corrected automatically. Then to Garrett. Mr. Montgomery is recovering well. Is there something you needed? Just being neighborly. Garrett stepped closer. Making sure the family's all right. After all, I've got a vested interest in that property. I'm sure you do. Something flickered in Garrett's eyes, surprise maybe at her tone. You've got a sharp tongue, Miss Whitmore. I've been told. Might want to be careful with that. Small towns have long memories. Is that a threat, Mr. Garrett? A friendly warning. He tipped his hat. Give my regards to Caleb. Tell him I'll be by to discuss his account soon. Very soon. He left. The 2 men followed. Thomas let out a breath. I told you he was bad. You did. Clara watched Garrett's retreating back. Thomas, how long has your father's debt been due? I don't know, but Mr. Garrett keeps saying time's running out. He says it every time he sees Pa. Has your father missed payments? I don't think so. But the accident, he was supposed to deliver horses this week. That's how he was going to make the next payment. Clara's heart sank further. Caleb couldn't ride, couldn't work, couldn't deliver horses or make payments. And Garrett was circling, waiting for his chance to strike. Come on, she said. Let's get the supplies and get home. Are you going to tell Pa about what Mr. Garrett said? Yes. He won't like it. No. He won't. Clara put a hand on Thomas's shoulder. But sometimes we have to hear things we don't like. That's part of being grown. Thomas nodded slowly. Then for the first time since she'd met him, he almost smiled. "You're not so bad, Miss Whitmore. High praise from you. Don't let it go to your head." They bought the supplies quickly: flour, salt, beans, coffee, and a small bag of peppermints that Thomas promised to share with his siblings. Clara counted out her coins carefully. $8 left. $8 between her and absolute destitution. But she didn't let Thomas see her worry. The ride home was faster. They both wanted to get back before dark. Clara's mind churned the whole way. Debt, Garrett, 7 children, a man who couldn't walk, and her. A stranger with no money, no power, and no right to be involved. But she was involved. She'd made herself involved the moment she'd walked through that cabin door. And Clara Whitmore had never been good at walking away from a fight. They reached the cabin as the sun touched the mountains. Caleb was at the window. She could see his silhouette against the firelight. Thomas jumped down and ran inside. "Pa, we're back." Clara followed more slowly, her heart heavy with what she had to tell him. Caleb was sitting up in bed, looking stronger than he had that morning. The children swarmed around Thomas, begging for peppermints and news from town. "Clara." Caleb's eyes found hers. "Everything all right?" She set down the supplies, met his gaze. "We need to talk about a man named Silas Garrett." Caleb's face went pale, and Clara knew this was only the beginning. Caleb's face told Clara everything she needed to know before he spoke a word. "What did Garrett say to you?" "Enough." Clara pulled a chair to his bedside while Thomas herded the younger children toward the kitchen with promises of peppermints. "He mentioned your account, said he'd be visiting soon." "Damn him. How much do you owe Caleb?" He looked away. "That ain't your concern. I'm living in your house caring for your children, and a man just threatened me in the middle of town. I'd say that makes it my concern." "He threatened you." "He warned me. Same thing, different words." Clara leaned forward. "How much?" Caleb was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. $300, due in 6 weeks. Clara's stomach dropped. $300 might as well have been 3,000. "And the payment you were supposed to make this week? $50, from selling the horses." He laughed bitterly. "The horses that are still in my barn because I'm lying here with a broken leg." "Can you get an extension?" "From Garrett." Caleb shook his head. "He's been waiting for this, waiting for me to fail. That land, my land, sits right between his ranch and the river. He's wanted it since before Martha died. There has to be something." "There isn't." Caleb's voice was sharp. "I've been over it 100 times. I can't work. I can't deliver the horses. I can't make the payment. In 6 weeks, Silas Garrett is going to take my home, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it." "Pa." Thomas stood in the doorway, his face pale. "Is that true? Are we going to lose the farm?" Caleb closed his eyes. "Thomas, you said we'd be okay. You promised Mama before she died that you'd take care of us. You promised." "I know what I promised." "Then fix it." "I can't." The words exploded out of Caleb, louder than he'd intended. Thomas flinched. Behind him, Clara saw Grace peek around the corner, her eyes wide and frightened. The cabin went silent. Caleb dragged a hand over his face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell. I just—" He looked at his son with something close to desperation. "I don't know how to fix this, Thomas. I've tried everything I know." Thomas's chin trembled, but he didn't cry. He was too old for that now, had been forced too old, too fast. "Then we'll figure out something else," he said quietly. "We have to." He turned and walked away. A moment later, Clara heard the cabin door open and close. "He's going to the barn," Caleb said. "That's where he goes when he's upset. Martha used to find him there talking to the horses." Should I go after him? No, give him time. Caleb's voice cracked. God, Clara, what am I going to do? Those children have already lost their mother. I can't let them lose their home too. Clara sat back, her mind racing. $300, 6 weeks, a broken leg, and 7 children. The horses, she said suddenly. The ones you were supposed to deliver. They're still here. 4 of them. Good horses trained and ready. What are they worth? $50 each, maybe $60 to the right buyer. But I can't ride, can't? I can ride. Caleb stared at her. What? I can ride. Not well, but well enough to lead horses to town. Clara's heart was pounding, but her voice stayed steady. If we can sell those horses, that's $200, maybe more. Clara, you can't just, why not? You need the money. I can help get it. She stood up, pacing. What else? What other assets do you have? The cattle, a few chickens, the land itself, but Garrett holds the deed as collateral. What about skills? Can you make anything, build anything? I was a carpenter before the war, built most of this cabin myself. Furniture. Could you make furniture? With a broken leg. With your hands, Caleb. Your leg's broken, not your arms. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or the faint stirring of hope. I suppose I could, if I had the wood, if anyone wanted to buy it. The general store in town, do they sell furniture? Some. Imported from back east mostly. Expensive. Then there's a market for locally made goods. Clara stopped pacing and faced him. Here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow I'm going to take those horses to town and find a buyer. While I'm there, I'll talk to the store owner about selling your furniture. You'll start making pieces, chairs, tables, whatever you can manage from bed. We'll use the money from the horses to make this month's payment and buy time. Clara. And I'm going to find out exactly what Garrett's game is. There's something wrong about this whole situation. A banker who threatens women and circles a grieving family like a vulture, that's not just business. That's personal. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, he shook his head. Why are you doing this? Doing what? This. All of this. You don't owe me anything. You don't owe my children anything. You could walk away right now, find work in town, build a life that doesn't involve a broken-down widower and his debts. Why are you staying? Clara didn't answer immediately. The truth was complicated, tangled up in her own pain and loneliness and desperate need to matter to someone. Because those children looked at me like I was the answer to a prayer, she finally said. Because your son stood in front of his siblings with a rifle and told me to get out. And when I didn't, he trusted me anyway. Because Hannah asked if I'd stay forever, and I didn't want to say no. She met his eyes. Because for the first time in 6 weeks, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Caleb held her gaze. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but something deeper. Recognition. Understanding. 2 broken people finding solid ground in each other. All right, he said quietly. We'll try it your way. But Clara, if it doesn't work, if Garrett takes the farm, I need you to promise me something. What? Take the children. Get them out of here. Don't let them watch their father lose everything. Clara's throat tightened. Caleb. Promise me. She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him it wouldn't come to that they'd find a way. But she understood what he was asking. He was trusting her with the most precious things in his world. I promise, she said. The next morning came cold and bright. Clara was up before dawn preparing for the trip to town. Elizabeth helped her pack food, while Thomas, still quiet, still wary, saddled the horses without being asked. 4 horses, Clara said, checking the leads. What are their names? The bay mare's Copper, the black gelding's Thunder, the 2 chestnuts are Bonnie and Duke. Which one's the calmest? Copper, she'll follow you anywhere. Clara mounted the horse she'd ridden before and gathered the lead ropes. 4 horses, $50 each. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. "Miss Clara?" Grace ran out of the cabin still in her nightgown. "You're coming back, right?" "Of course I am." "Promise." Clara leaned down and touched the girl's cheek. "I promise. Now go inside before you catch cold." Grace nodded but didn't move. "Thomas said you might leave. He said everyone leaves eventually." Clara looked at Thomas, who had the grace to look ashamed. Then she looked back at Grace. "Your brother's had a hard time, sweetheart. He's scared, and when people are scared, they sometimes say things they don't mean." She straightened in the saddle. "I'm coming back. That's not a maybe. That's a fact." She rode out before Grace could respond. The last thing she saw was Thomas putting his arm around his sister and leading her inside. The ride to town took 3 hours. Clara used the time to plan turning over options in her mind, like cards in a game she couldn't afford to lose. The horses were the priority, then the furniture idea, then Garrett. Especially Garrett. Prosperity was busier than it had been the day before. Saturday, Clara realized. Market day. Farmers and ranchers from surrounding areas had come to town to trade. She tied the horses outside the general store and went inside. "Help you, miss?" The man behind the counter was middle-aged balding with kind eyes behind wire spectacles. "I'm looking to sell some horses, 4 of them trained and healthy. Do you know anyone who might be interested?" "Horses." The man looked past her to the window. "Those the Montgomery horses. You know them. Everyone knows Caleb Montgomery's horses, best in the territory." The man extended his hand. "I'm Harold Perkins. My mother was watching his children when she passed. God rest her soul." "I'm so sorry for your loss." "And I'm sorry for his. Agatha loved those kids like her own grandchildren." Harold shook his head. "How's Caleb doing?" "Heard he had an accident." "Broken leg. He'll recover, but he can't work for several weeks." "That's a shame, especially with the debt and all." Clara's ears perked up. "You know about that?" "Everyone knows. Garrett's been telling anyone who'll listen that he's about to add the Montgomery spread to his holdings." Harold's expression darkened. "That man's a snake. Been circling Caleb since Martha died." "Is there something specific between them?" "Something personal." Harold hesitated. "Might be you should ask Caleb about that." "I'm asking you." The shopkeeper studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. Martha Montgomery was Garrett's intended before she married Caleb. They were engaged for 6 months back before the war. But Caleb came home a hero, and Martha, well, she fell in love, broke off the engagement, and married Caleb within the year. Clara's stomach turned. Garrett never forgave them. Garrett never forgives anyone. He's patient, though. 20 years he's been waiting for his chance. Now he's got it. Not if I have anything to say about it. Clara set her jaw. About those horses. I'll take them. She blinked. Just like that. I've been needing horses for the mail route expansion. Was going to buy from Garrett's ranch, but I'd rather give my money to Caleb any day. Harold named a price. $60 each, $240 total. It was more than Clara had hoped for. That's generous. It's fair. Those are good horses. Harold went to his cash box and counted out the bills. You take care of that family, miss. Whitmore. Clara Whitmore. You take care of them, Miss Whitmore. They've had enough grief. Clara tucked the money into her coat. I intend to. But I need one more thing. Name it. I need to see the original loan documents, the ones Garrett holds on the Montgomery property. Harold's eyebrows rose. That's a tall order. Garrett keeps those locked up tight. But they're public record, aren't they? Filed with the territory. They should be. Harold rubbed his chin. The courthouse is in Helena, 2 days' ride from here, but we've got a telegraph office. I could wire the territorial clerk, see what he can find. Do it, please. Clara counted out some of the money she'd just earned. Whatever it costs. Keep your money. This one's on me. Harold smiled grimly. I'd pay good money to see Silas Garrett taken down a peg. Clara left the store feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks, hope. She was halfway to her horse when a voice stopped her cold. Miss Whitmore, we meet again. Garrett stepped out of the shadows between buildings. His 2 men flanked him, arms crossed over broad chests. Clara didn't run, didn't flinch. She'd faced worse than a small-town bully with a grudge. Mr. Garrett, shouldn't you be at the bank counting other people's money? His eyes narrowed. I see you've sold Montgomery's horses. I have. And I assume the money's going toward his debt. That's between Mr. Montgomery and his creditors. I am his creditor. Garrett moved closer. And I don't appreciate outsiders interfering in my business. Your business with Mr. Montgomery is a loan, nothing more, unless you're suggesting there's something improper about the arrangement. Garrett's smile vanished. Be careful, Miss Whitmore. You're new here. You don't understand how things work. Then enlighten me. This territory runs on relationships, favors, debts. He leaned in, his voice dropping. I could make your life very comfortable here. A woman alone needs friends. The right word in the right ear could get you a teaching position, a place in society. Or the wrong word could make sure no one in this territory will hire you, house you, or even speak to you. Clara's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a choice. Walk away from the Montgomery family. Let nature take its course. And I'll make sure you're taken care of. And if I refuse, then you'll learn what it means to be my enemy. Garrett straightened. Think about it, Miss Whitmore. You've got until Sunday. He walked away. His men followed. Clara stood frozen for a moment, her hands trembling despite herself. Then she clenched them into fists and headed for her horse. Garrett wanted a fight fine. He'd get one. The ride back to the cabin felt shorter, fueled by anger and determination. Clara ran through the conversation in her mind, looking for weaknesses, for leverage, for anything she could use. Martha had been engaged to Garrett. That explained the personal vendetta. But there had to be more, some legal angle, some flaw in the loan documents. Men like Garrett didn't operate cleanly. There was always something hidden. She just had to find it. The cabin came into view just as the sun began to set. Clara pushed the horse faster suddenly, desperate to see the children, to see Caleb, to know they were safe. Thomas met her at the door. You came back. I told you I would. I know, He stopped, swallowed hard. I'm sorry for what I said, to Grace, about you leaving. Clara dismounted and faced him. Thomas, you've got every right to be cautious. You've been hurt. You've lost people you loved. That makes it hard to trust. It's not that I don't trust you. It's that... He looked away. Every time I start to think maybe things are gonna be okay, something bad happens. Mama getting sick, Pa getting hurt, Mrs. Perkins dying. His voice cracked. I'm scared to hope anymore. Clara knelt down so she could look him in the eye. I know. Hope is terrifying when you've been let down. But here's the thing, Thomas, your father's alive. Your siblings are healthy. You've made it through the worst and you're still standing. She put a hand on his shoulder. That's not luck. That's strength. Your strength. Thomas blinked rapidly. You really think so? I know so. I've seen grown men give up over less than what you've faced. She squeezed his shoulder. You're going to be all right, Thomas. All of you. I'm going to make sure of it. For the first time since she'd met him, Thomas didn't pull away from her touch. Instead, he nodded just once, and something in his face relaxed. Pa's waiting for you, he said. He's been worried all day. Then let's not keep him waiting any longer. They walked inside together. Caleb was sitting up in bed whittling something from a piece of scrap wood. He looked up when Clara entered, and the relief on his face made her chest ache. You're back. I'm back. And I have news." She pulled the money from her coat and placed it on the bed. $240. Harold Perkins bought all 4 horses. Caleb stared at the bills like they might bite him. $240. That's 60 each. He overpaid. He said they were good horses, and he wanted to help. Harold's a good man. His mother was... Caleb's voice caught. "She was good to my kids." "I know. He told me." Clara sat down. "He told me something else too, about Garrett. About Martha." Caleb's expression closed off. "What did he tell you? That Martha was engaged to Garrett before she married you?" Silence stretched between them. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the other room, children's voices murmured. "It was a long time ago," Caleb finally said. "Not to Garrett. He's been waiting 20 years for this." "I know. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it doesn't matter." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Martha chose me. We were happy. She loved me and I loved her, and whatever Garrett thinks he's owed, he's wrong." "I'm not saying he's right. I'm saying we need to understand what we're dealing with." Clara leaned forward. "This isn't just about money, Caleb. It's personal. He's not going to give up." "I know that too." "Then help me fight him." Caleb looked at her with something close to wonder. "You really want to take on Silas Garrett?" "I want to protect your family. If that means taking on Garrett, then yes." "He could destroy you. He's got power connections. And I've got nothing to lose." Clara's voice was fierce. "I've already lost everything once. My reputation, my career, my future, all taken by a man who thought he was untouchable. I won't let that happen again. Not to me, and not to your children." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached out and took her hand. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most foolish. Maybe both." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, and Clara felt heat rise to her face. His hand was rough, calloused from work, but his touch was gentle. "Clara." "Pa." Elizabeth appeared in the doorway, baby Catherine on her hip. "Benjamin won't eat his dinner. He says his stomach hurts." The moment broke. Clara pulled her hand back, her heart still racing. "I'll handle it," she said, standing quickly. "You rest." She found Benjamin curled up in a corner, his arms wrapped around his middle. His face was pale, his forehead damp with sweat. "Benjamin, what's wrong, sweetheart?" "My tummy hurts real bad, Miss Clara." She pressed a hand to his forehead, warm but not feverish. "Show me where it hurts." He pointed to his lower right side. Clara's blood went cold. "Thomas." She kept her voice calm, but something in it made the older boy come running. "Get the wagon ready. We need to get Benjamin to town, now." "What's wrong?" "His appendix. If it bursts." She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Thomas ran. Clara scooped Benjamin into her arms and headed for the door. The boy whimpered against her shoulder, his small body trembling. "Caleb," she called. "I'm taking Benjamin to the doctor. I'll be back as soon as I can." "Wait, what's wrong, Clara?" But she was already gone, running through the snow toward the barn where Thomas was hitching the horse to the wagon with desperate speed. "Is he gonna die?" Thomas asked, his voice breaking. "Not if I can help it." Clara climbed into the wagon with Benjamin still in her arms. "Stay here. Take care of your father and siblings. I'll send word as soon as I can." "But, Thomas." She met his eyes. "I need you to be strong. Can you do that?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Clara snapped the reins, and the wagon lurched forward into the darkness. The ride to town was the longest 3 hours of Clara's life. Benjamin drifted in and out of consciousness, crying out when the wagon hit bumps, whimpering between. She talked to him constantly. Stories, songs, promises she prayed she could keep. "You're going to be fine, sweetheart. The doctor's going to fix you right up. Just stay with me. Stay with me, Benjamin." She reached town after midnight and drove straight to the doctor's office, pounding on the door until a bleary-eyed man in a nightshirt answered. "What in God's name?" "His appendix, 5 years old. The pain started hours ago." Clara pushed past him, laying Benjamin on the examination table. "Please, you have to help him." The doctor's demeanor changed instantly. He went to work prodding Benjamin's abdomen, checking his temperature, his pulse. "You're right. Appendicitis." His face was grim. "I need to operate. Now." "Then do it." "You understand the risks. Surgery like this on a child this young?" "I understand that if you don't operate, he'll die." Clara grabbed the doctor's arm. "Save him. Please." The doctor nodded and began preparing his instruments. Clara stepped back, her legs shaking, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She'd promised Caleb she'd protect his children. Now, she just had to pray she could keep that promise. The surgery took 2 hours. Clara paced the waiting room, unable to sit, unable to think about anything except that small boy on the operating table. She'd known Benjamin for barely a week. How had he become so important to her so quickly? Because they all had. All 7 children. And Caleb. Especially Caleb. When the doctor finally emerged, his apron stained with blood, Clara's heart stopped. "He's alive," the doctor said, and Clara nearly collapsed with relief. "I got to it in time. He'll need to rest for several weeks, but he should make a full recovery." "Thank God." Clara pressed a hand to her mouth. "Thank God. He's asking for you." She found Benjamin lying on a narrow bed, pale but alert. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "Miss Clara, you stayed." "Of course I stayed." She sat beside him and took his hand. "How do you feel?" "Tired. And my tummy still hurts, but different now." "That's the medicine the doctor gave you. It'll help you heal." Benjamin was quiet for a moment. Then, in a small voice, "I was scared." "I know, sweetheart. So was I." "You were—" He seemed surprised. "But you're a grown-up." "Grown-ups get scared too. We just try not to show it." She brushed hair from his forehead. "But you know what? Being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're brave enough to keep going, even when things are hard." Benjamin considered this. Like Thomas. He gets scared, but he keeps going. Exactly like Thomas. And exactly like you. The boy smiled a small, tired smile that made Clara's heart swell. "Miss Clara, are you going to be my new mama?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She'd been expecting it from one of the children eventually, but not now, not like this. "Would you want me to be?" she heard herself ask. Benjamin nodded. "You're nice. And you make Pa smile. He didn't smile for a long time after Mama died, but he smiles at you." Clara didn't know what to say, so she just squeezed his hand and said, "Let's focus on getting you better first. We can talk about the rest later." "Okay?" Benjamin's eyes were already closing. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" "I'll stay as long as you need me." "Promise. Promise." She held his hand until his breathing deepened and his grip relaxed. Then she sat back in her chair, exhausted and overwhelmed and utterly, completely lost. Because Benjamin was right. Somewhere in the past week, she'd stopped thinking of this as temporary. Stopped thinking of the Montgomery family as strangers she was helping. They were hers now, all of them, and she was terrified of what that meant. Morning came, and with it, Harold Perkins. "Heard what happened," he said, handing Clara a cup of coffee. "The whole town's talking about the woman who rode through the night to save Caleb Montgomery's boy." "I did what anyone would do." "No, you did what a mother would do." Harold sat down across from her. "Miss Whitmore, I got a response to that telegraph I sent." Clara straightened. "About the loan documents." "About the loan documents." Harold's expression was strange, angry, and excited at the same time. "There's a problem with them." What kind of problem? The kind that might just save Caleb Montgomery's farm. He handed her a folded paper. Clara read it once, then again, her hands starting to shake. This can't be right. It is. I had the clerk double-check. Clara looked up, her mind racing. Garrett's going to destroy us when he finds out we know. Probably, but he can't destroy the law. Harold leaned forward. What are you going to do? Clara folded the paper and tucked it into her coat right next to her heart. I'm going to fight. Clara rode back to the cabin with the telegram burning a hole in her coat pocket and Benjamin's words echoing in her mind. Are you going to be my new mama? She didn't know how to answer that question, didn't know if she had the right to answer it. But she knew one thing for certain, Silas Garrett was not going to take this family's home. Thomas saw her coming and ran out to meet her, his face pale with fear. Benjamin, is he? He's alive. The doctor saved him. Clara dismounted and grabbed Thomas's shoulders. He's going to be fine, Thomas. He's resting at the doctor's office, and I'll bring him home in a few days when he's strong enough to travel. Thomas's legs buckled. Clara caught him holding him up as sobs racked his thin frame. I thought when you left, I know. She held him tight, letting him cry against her shoulder. But he's okay. Your brother's okay. I can't lose anyone else, Miss Clara. I can't. You won't. I promise you won't. She meant it. God help her, she meant every word. When Thomas had collected himself, they went inside together. Caleb was out of bed against doctor's orders, clearly sitting in a chair by the fire, with his splinted leg propped up on a stool. The other children swarmed around Clara the moment she walked through the door. Is Benjamin dead? Hannah asked, her voice trembling. No, sweetheart. Benjamin's going to be just fine. When's he coming home? In a few days. The doctor needs to watch him until he's stronger. Can we visit him? Soon, I promise. Caleb watched her with an expression she couldn't read. Clara, come here. She crossed to him, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. She'd been awake for over 30 hours, running on nothing but fear and determination. Sit down, Caleb said, before you fall down. I'm fine. You're dead on your feet. Sit. She sat. Caleb reached out and took her hand, and Clara was too tired to pull away. Thank you, he said quietly, for saving my son. I did what anyone would. No. You did what his mother would have done. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Martha would have moved heaven and earth for those children. You did the same. Clara's throat tightened. Caleb, let me finish. His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. I've been fighting alone for 2 years, telling myself I didn't need help, didn't deserve it, pushing away everyone who tried to get close because I was scared that if I let them in, I'd lose them too. He swallowed hard. But you walked into my life with a loaf of bread and a broken wagon, and you've done more for my family in 2 weeks than I've managed in 2 years. That's not true. It is true, and I'm done pretending otherwise. He squeezed her hand. Whatever happens with Garrett, whatever happens with the farm, I want you to know that you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. What's that? Hope. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes and blink them back furiously. Speaking of Garrett, she said, pulling the telegram from her pocket. We need to talk. She told him everything. Harold's telegraph to the territorial clerk, the response that had arrived that morning, the problem with the loan documents. Caleb's face went from confused to shocked to furious as she spoke. He forged the interest rate. According to the territorial records, your original loan was at 6% interest. The documents Garrett holds show 12%. That's why your debt has grown so fast. He's been charging you double what he's legally entitled to. That son of a bitch. It gets worse. Clara unfolded the telegram. The clerk found something else, a lien on your property that was filed 3 months before Martha died. Do you know anything about that? Caleb shook his head slowly. I never filed any lien. Neither did Martha, but someone did using her signature. Her signature? Caleb's face went white. That's impossible. Martha would never. She didn't. The clerk compared the signature to other documents on file. It's a forgery. Silence fell over the cabin. The children had gone quiet, sensing the tension, even if they didn't understand it. He's been planning this for years, Caleb said finally, his voice hollow. Even before Martha died. He knew he must have known she was sick, and he started setting the trap. It looks that way. I'll kill him. No. Clara's voice was sharp. You'll do nothing of the kind. What you'll do is beat him at his own game. How he's got the law in his pocket. Half the town owes him money. No one's going to stand against him. Harold Perkins will. The doctor who saved Benjamin will. I told him what we found, and he was ready to testify on the spot. Clara leaned forward. We don't need the whole town, Caleb. We just need enough people to make Garrett nervous. Men like him survive on reputation. If we can prove he's a fraud, a forger, a man who preys on widows and orphans, he'll destroy us first. He'll try. Clara's jaw set. But I've been destroyed before. I survived, and I'm not going to let him do the same to your family. Caleb stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. You're something else, Clara Whitmore. So I've been told. Pa. Thomas had crept closer, listening to every word. Is Mr. Garrett really a bad man? Caleb hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, son, he is. Then we should stop him. It's not that simple. Why not? Thomas's chin jutted out stubbornly. He's been lying and cheating and trying to take our home. That's wrong. We should stop him. Thomas. I can help. I can tell people what he's done. You can stay safe. Caleb's voice was firm. This is grown-up business, Thomas. I need you to look after your brothers and sisters, not get involved in a fight you're too young for. But, Pa. Thomas. Clara put a hand on his arm. Your father's right. The best thing you can do is take care of your family while we handle Garrett. Can you do that? Thomas looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Clara's expression made him stop. Fine, he muttered. But if you need help, you'll be the first person I ask. That seemed to satisfy him. He gathered his siblings and took them to the other room, leaving Clara and Caleb alone. You're good with him, Caleb said quietly. He's a good kid. He just needs someone to trust. He trusts you. I can see it. Caleb's eyes searched her face. Clara, about what Benjamin said about you being their mama. He told you? The doctor sent word when I sent word asking about his condition. Caleb shifted in his chair. I know it's too soon to talk about anything like that. But I need you to know that if you ever wanted. Caleb. Clara held up a hand. Let's survive Garrett first. Then we can talk about the future. Is there a future? For us, I mean. The question hung in the air, fragile, and weighted with possibility. I don't know, Clara admitted. I came here running from a broken engagement, a destroyed reputation, a life that fell apart in my hands. I never expected to find. She stopped, struggling for words. Find what? A family. A place where I belong. A man who looks at me like I matter. Caleb reached for her hand again. You do matter. More than you know. Then let me prove it. Clara stood, squaring her shoulders. I'm going back to town tomorrow. I'm going to confront Garrett with what we know and give him a chance to make this right. He won't take it. No. But he needs to know we're not afraid of him. And he needs to know that if he comes after this family, he's going to face a fight he's not prepared for. Clara. I'm not asking for permission, Caleb. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. A long pause. Then Caleb nodded slowly. All right, but you're not going alone. You can't ride. No, but Thomas can, and Harold Perkins can meet you in town. Caleb's jaw tightened. If Garrett tries anything, I want witnesses. Fine, witnesses it is. She started toward the door, but Caleb's voice stopped her. Clara. She turned. Be careful. Garrett's dangerous when he's cornered. So am I. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Clara dressed carefully, choosing the nicest dress she'd brought from Philadelphia, a deep blue wool that made her eyes look fierce. If she was going to war, she was going to look the part. Thomas was waiting by the horses, his face set with determination. You sure you want to do this? Clara asked. You said you'd ask if you needed help. You need help. She couldn't argue with that logic. They rode into prosperity in silence, Thomas's presence steady and reassuring beside her. Harold Perkins met them at the edge of town, his expression grim. Garrett knows something's up. He's been asking questions all morning. Good. Let him wonder. Clara dismounted and handed her reins to Thomas. Where is he? The bank. Where else? Then that's where I'm going. Miss Whitmore, Clara. Harold caught her arm. Are you sure about this? Once you confront him, there's no going back. I'm sure. He could ruin you, run you out of town. He could try. Clara met Harold's eyes steadily. But I've already lost everything once. I'm not afraid of losing again. She walked toward the bank, her boots crunching on the frozen ground, her heart pounding in her chest. Thomas and Harold followed at a distance, ready to intervene if needed. The bank was a 2-story building, the nicest in town. Clara pushed through the doors without hesitation. Garrett sat behind a massive oak desk, papers spread before him. He looked up when she entered, and a smile spread across his face, the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse. Miss Whitmore, what an unexpected pleasure. I doubt that. You've been expecting me since Harold sent that telegraph. Something flickered in Garrett's eyes. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Then let me clarify. Clara pulled the telegram from her coat and dropped it on his desk. I know about the forged interest rate. I know about the fraudulent lien. I know that you've been systematically stealing from Caleb Montgomery for years, and I know that it's all connected to a grudge you've held for 2 decades because a woman chose him over you. Garrett's smile vanished. You're making very serious accusations. I'm stating facts. Facts that are documented in the territorial records. Facts that could end your career, your reputation, and possibly your freedom. No one will believe you. You're nobody, a disgraced teacher from back east with no connections and no credibility. Maybe. But Harold Perkins will believe me, and Dr. Morrison, and every person in this town who's ever felt the weight of your thumb pressing down on them. Clara leaned forward. You've made enemies, Mr. Garrett. A lot of them. All they need is someone brave enough to stand up first. And that's you. Is it the brave champion of the downtrodden? That's me. Garrett stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. He was taller than Clara had realized, and broader, and for a moment she felt a flicker of fear. Then she thought of Benjamin in that hospital bed, of Thomas crying in her arms, of Caleb's face when he'd said she'd given him hope. The fear disappeared. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Garrett said, his voice low and dangerous. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A bully. A fraud. A man so consumed by bitterness that he'd destroy an innocent family to satisfy his wounded pride. Martha should have been mine. Martha was never yours. She was her own woman, and she made her own choice. You couldn't accept that, so you decided to punish everyone she loved. I loved her. You wanted to own her. There's a difference. Garrett's face contorted with rage. He moved toward her, and Clara stood her ground, refusing to flinch. I could destroy you with a word. One word, and no one in this territory will hire you, house you, or even acknowledge your existence. Then do it. Clara's voice didn't waver. But it won't change what's in those records. It won't change the truth. And it won't stop me from telling everyone what you've done. You think anyone will care? Montgomery's a nobody. His children are nobodies. In 5 years, no one will even remember they existed. I'll remember. The words came from the doorway. Clara turned to see Thomas standing there, his small hands clenched into fists, his face white with fury. Thomas. I'll remember, the boy repeated. And I'll make sure everyone else remembers too. My mama was a good person. My pa is a good man. And you... His voice cracked, but he kept going. You're nothing but a liar and a thief. Get this child out of my bank. No. Clara moved to stand beside Thomas, putting a hand on his shoulder. He has as much right to be here as anyone. This is his family's future you're trying to steal. Garrett looked at them, the woman and the boy standing together against him, and something in his expression shifted. The rage was still there, but beneath it, Clara saw something else. Fear. He was afraid. You have 1 week, Clara said. 1 week to void the fraudulent documents and restore Caleb Montgomery's property to its rightful status. If you don't, I'll take everything we have to the territorial court in Helena. I'll make sure every newspaper in Montana knows what you've done, and I'll spend every penny I have left to see you brought to justice. You're bluffing. Try me. She turned and walked out, Thomas beside her, leaving Garrett alone with his fury and his fear. Outside, Harold Perkins was waiting, his face anxious. Well, it's done. We've given him his chance. You think he'll take it? No. Clara looked back at the bank, her jaw set. But now he knows we're serious. And now he knows he's not going to win without a fight. They rode back to the cabin in silence. Thomas pressed close against Clara's back, his arms tight around her waist. Miss Clara, he said finally. Yes. I'm sorry I came in. I know you told me to wait outside, but I heard what he said about my mama, and I couldn't. You have nothing to apologize for. Clara squeezed his hands where they clasped at her waist. What you did took courage, real courage. I was scared. So was I. You didn't look scared. That's the trick, Thomas. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what needs to be done anyway. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then, Miss Clara, I'm glad you came. To our cabin, I mean. That first day. So am I. I didn't want to be. For a long time I didn't want to be glad. It felt like betraying Mama. His voice dropped to a whisper. But I think Mama would have liked you. I think she would have wanted someone like you to take care of us. Clara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's true. I know. That's what makes it nice. They reached the cabin as the sun began to set. The other children rushed out to meet them, and Clara found herself wrapped in a tangle of small arms and eager questions. What happened? Did you see Mr. Garrett? Is he going to leave us alone now? Is Papa gonna be okay? Clara answered as best she could, trying to reassure them without making promises she couldn't keep. Finally, she extracted herself and went inside to find Caleb. He was waiting by the fire, his face tight with worry. Well, Clara sat down across from him and told him everything: the confrontation, Thomas's brave interruption, Garrett's fear beneath the rage. When she finished, Caleb let out a long breath. You kicked the hornet's nest. I had to. He needed to know we weren't going to lie down and let him take what's yours. What's ours? Caleb reached for her hand. Clara, you've earned a place in this family. Whatever happens, whether we win or lose, you're one of us now. Caleb, I mean it. The children love you. He stopped, swallowed hard. I care about you. More than I should, probably. More than makes sense given how short a time we've known each other. Feelings don't follow timetables. No, they don't. He met her eyes. When this is over, when Garrett's dealt with and Benjamin's home and things settle down, I'd like to court you proper, if you'll let me. Clara's heart stuttered in her chest. Court me. Dinners, walks, conversations that aren't about survival. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I know I'm not much of a catch, a broken-down widower with 7 kids and a mountain of debt. But I'd treat you right. I'd spend every day trying to make you happy. Caleb Montgomery, are you proposing to me? I'm asking for the chance to propose, someday. When you're ready. Clara looked at him. This man who'd crawled 5 miles on a broken leg to get home to his children. This man who'd lost everything and kept fighting. This man who looked at her like she was the answer to a prayer he'd forgotten how to say. Yes, she said quietly. When this is over, yes. The smile that spread across Caleb's face was like the sun coming out after a storm. Clara. The cabin door burst open. Thomas stood in the doorway, his face white as snow. Riders coming, 6 of them. His voice shook. And they're carrying torches. Clara was on her feet instantly. Get the children to the back room, now. Who is it? Caleb struggled to stand, grabbing his rifle from beside the bed. Garrett? Has to be. Clara moved to the window and peered out. 6 riders moving fast, flames dancing in their hands. He didn't wait a week. He didn't even wait a day. Get the children hidden. I'll hold them off. You can barely stand. I can shoot. Caleb's jaw was set. Clara, please, get the children safe. She wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but the sound of hoofbeats was growing louder, and there was no time. Thomas, she grabbed the boy's arm. The cellar. Take everyone to the cellar and don't come out until I come get you. But Pa, your father can handle himself. Your brothers and sisters need you. Go. Thomas ran, gathering his siblings with the efficiency of practice. Within seconds they were gone, the cellar door closing behind them. Clara turned back to Caleb. I'm not leaving you. You have to. No. She grabbed his other rifle from the wall. I told you I'd fight for this family. I meant it. The riders had reached the yard. Clara could hear them shouting, see the torchlight flickering through the windows. Montgomery! A voice rang out, not Garrett's, but one of his men. Come out. We just want to talk. Like hell you do, Caleb shouted back. You're on my property. Get off before I start shooting. Boss says you've got something that belongs to him. Some papers. He wants them back. Clara's hand tightened on her rifle. The telegram. Garrett wanted to destroy the evidence. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, Montgomery. The woman took documents from the courthouse. Give them back and we'll leave peaceful like. Clara looked at Caleb. They don't know I'm here. They will if you don't stay hidden. Caleb, Clara, please. His voice was desperate. If they take me, I need you to get the children out. Get them to Helena. Find a lawyer. Don't let Garrett win. Nobody's taking anybody. Clara moved to the back window, calculating distances. The barn. If I can get to the barn, I can circle around behind them. That's insane. You have a better idea. He didn't. They both knew it. Clara. When they come through that door, shoot to wound, not kill. We don't need murder charges on top of everything else. Clara, I know. She met his eyes, pouring everything she felt into that single look. I know. Now hold them off. She slipped out the back window and dropped into the snow. The night was cold and dark, the torchlight from the riders casting long shadows across the yard. Clara crouched low and ran for the barn, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. She made it to the barn door and slipped inside. The horses whickered nervously, sensing danger. She grabbed a length of rope from the wall and crept toward the back entrance. From outside, she heard shouting, the crack of gunfire, glass breaking. Please, she prayed. Please, let him be okay. She emerged from the barn behind the riders. They were focused on the cabin, 2 of them trying to force the door while the others covered them with rifles. Clara had one chance. She raised her rifle and fired into the air. The riders spun. In the split second of confusion, Caleb fired from inside, hitting one man in the leg. He went down screaming. "Drop your weapons!" Clara shouted. "All of you now!" "There's only one of her," one of the men yelled. Rush her. Two of them charged. Clara fired, hitting the ground at their feet, and they skidded to a stop. The next one goes through flesh, she said, her voice steady despite her terror. Try me. Stand off. The riders looked at each other, then at their wounded companion, then at Clara. This ain't worth what Garrett's paying us, one of them muttered. Then ride away, Clara said. Ride away and tell your boss that the Montgomery family isn't alone anymore. Tell him that if he sends anyone else, they'll get the same welcome. And tell him, she raised her voice, tell him that those documents are already on their way to Helena. Whatever he's planning, it's too late. It was a bluff. A desperate, dangerous bluff. But they didn't know that. The riders exchanged looks. Then one by one they began to back toward their horses. This isn't over, the leader said. No, Clara agreed. It isn't. But the next round happens in a courtroom, not with torches and guns. Tell Garrett, I'll see him there. They rode away. Clara stood in the snow rifle still raised until the hoofbeats faded into silence. Then her legs gave out. Caleb found her there a moment later, hobbling out of the cabin with blood on his shirt. His own, she realized, from a graze along his arm. Clara, are you hurt? I'm fine. She couldn't stop shaking. You're shot. Just a scratch. He pulled her against his chest, holding her tight, despite the pain it must have caused him. You magnificent, foolish, brave woman. You saved us. I bluffed. I told them the documents were already in Helena. Then we need to make that true. First thing tomorrow. Caleb. You're incredible. You know that, absolutely incredible. Clara laughed, a wild, slightly hysterical sound. I was terrified. So was I. He pulled back to look at her face. But you did it anyway. Just like you said, being brave means doing what needs to be done, even when you're scared. I had good motivation. Oh, 7 children in the cellar, 1 stubborn rancher with a broken leg. She touched his face gently. People worth fighting for. Pa, Thomas's voice came from the cabin. Pa, is it over? It's over, son. You can come out now. The children emerged, pouring out of the cellar like water from a dam. They ran to Clara and Caleb, wrapping around them in a tangle of arms and tears in relief. I heard shooting, Grace sobbed. I thought you were dead. We're fine, Clara assured her. Everyone's fine. Where did the bad men go? Away. They're not coming back. Promise. Clara looked at Caleb over the children's heads. He nodded, once his eyes fierce with determination. Promise, she said. They're never coming back. Because tomorrow the documents would go to Helena. Tomorrow the fight would move to courtrooms and official channels. Tomorrow Silas Garrett would learn what happened to men who preyed on families with nothing left to lose. But tonight, Clara held the children close and let herself believe that everything was going to be all right. Clara left for Helena before dawn. She kissed each of the children goodbye while they slept, lingering longest over Benjamin, who had finally been brought home from the doctor just 2 days before. His small hand clutched hers even in sleep. Come back, he murmured without waking. I will, she whispered. I promise. Caleb was waiting for her by the door, his face tight with worry. I should be going with you. You can barely walk, and the children need you here. Harold's going with you. Meeting me at the edge of town. We'll travel together. Caleb reached out and took her hand, pulling her close despite his injured leg. Clara, if something happens. Nothing's going to happen. If something happens, he repeated firmly. I need you to know that these past weeks have been the best of my life since Martha died. You've given us more than I can ever repay. Caleb, let me finish. His voice was rough with emotion. I love you. I know it's too soon to say that. I know we've only known each other a short time, but I love you. And if you don't come back, I'm coming back. Clara cupped his face in her hands. I love you too, and I'm going to Helena to make sure Garrett never threatens this family again. Then I'm coming back, and we're going to build a life together. You, me, and 7 children who've already stolen my heart. Promise. Promise. She kissed him, then a real kiss, deep and full of everything she felt. When she pulled back, Caleb's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Go, he said hoarsely, before I do something foolish like tie you to a chair and never let you leave. That does sound foolish. It sounds wonderful. Clara laughed despite herself. I'll be back in 4 days, 5 at most. I'll be counting the hours. She rode out into the darkness, her heart full and her resolve iron. Harold met her as promised, his horse loaded with supplies for the journey. They rode in silence for the first hour, the cold biting at their faces as the sky slowly lightened. You know Garrett won't take this lying down, Harold said finally. I know. He's got friends in Helena, politicians, businessmen, people who owe him favors. Then we'll have to be very convincing. Clara. Harold's voice was serious. I've known Silas Garrett for 20 years. He's never lost a fight. Not once. There's a first time for everything. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm trying to make sure you understand what we're up against. Clara pulled her horse to a stop and faced him. Harold, I understand perfectly. I understand that Garrett has power, money, and connections. I understand that we're 2 nobodies from a small town trying to take down a man who spent decades building his empire. I understand that the odds are against us. She set her jaw. But I also understand that those 7 children deserve to grow up in their home. I understand that Caleb Montgomery has already lost his wife, nearly lost his son, and has fought alone for 2 years against a man who wants to destroy him. And I understand that sometimes the only thing standing between a bully and his victim is someone willing to stand up. Harold was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right. Then let's go to war. They reached Helena 2 days later, exhausted and trail-worn, but determined. The territorial courthouse was an imposing building, all stone and columns and official gravity. Clara felt small standing before it, but she didn't let herself hesitate. The clerk's office is on the 2nd floor, Harold said. Ask for a man named Josiah Webb. He's honest, one of the few in this building who is. You're not coming with me. I've got other business, people I need to talk to. Harold's expression was grim. If we're going to beat Garrett, we need more than just legal documents. We need allies. Be careful. You too. Clara entered the courthouse alone. The clerk's office was small and cramped, overflowing with papers and ledgers. An elderly man sat behind a desk, peering at documents through thick spectacles. Mr. Webb. He looked up. That's me. Can I help you? My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm here about a property dispute involving a man named Silas Garrett. Webb's expression changed instantly. He glanced toward the door, then back at Clara. Close that door, he said quietly, and sit down. Clara obeyed, her heart pounding. You're the one Harold Perkins sent the telegraph about, Webb said. The woman staying with the Montgomery family. That's right. Do you have the documents? Clara pulled them from her coat. The telegram copies of the original loan agreements, the evidence of the forged interest rate and fraudulent lien. Webb examined them carefully, his face growing more troubled with each page. This is serious, he said finally. If what you're claiming is true, it is true, every word. Then Silas Garrett has committed multiple felonies: forgery, fraud, attempted theft of property. Webb shook his head. The man's been operating like this for years. We've had suspicions but never proof. Now you have proof. I need to verify these against our records. It will take time. How much time? A day, maybe 2. Clara's stomach dropped. Mr. Webb, every day that passes is a day Garrett has to cover his tracks. He already sent men to burn down the Montgomery cabin. If he finds out we're here, he already knows. Clara froze. What? Webb's face was grave. Garrett has eyes everywhere, Miss Whitmore. The moment you rode into Helena, word went out. He probably knew you were coming before you reached the city limits. Then we need to move faster. We need to move carefully. Webb stood and gathered the documents. I'm going to take these to the territorial judge. He's an honest man, one of the few Garrett hasn't managed to corrupt. If he agrees there's enough evidence for an investigation, we can have Garrett arrested within the week. And if he doesn't agree, then you'll have made a very powerful enemy for nothing." Webb met her eyes. "Are you prepared for that possibility?" Clara thought of Caleb, of Thomas and Benjamin and Hannah and the others, of the cabin that had become her home and the family that had become her purpose. "I'm prepared," she said. "Whatever it takes." Webb nodded. "Come back tomorrow afternoon. I should have an answer by then." Clara spent the night at a small boarding house on the edge of town. She barely slept, her mind churning with worry and fear. What if it wasn't enough? What if Garrett's connections proved stronger than their evidence? What if she failed and everything they'd fought for was lost? She was still lying awake when someone knocked on her door. Clara grabbed the small pistol she'd brought and approached cautiously. "Who is it?" "It's Harold. Open up." She unlocked the door, and Harold slipped inside, his face pale. "What's wrong?" "We've got a problem. A big one." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that walks on two legs and carries a badge." Harold ran a hand through his hair. "Garrett's bought the territorial marshal. I just found out he's planning to have you arrested tomorrow morning." "Arrested on what charges?" "Theft, extortion, whatever he can make stick." Harold's voice was grim. "He's claiming you stole those documents from his bank. Says you've been blackmailing him, threatening to forge evidence unless he pays you off." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "That's insane. No one will believe that." "They don't have to believe it. They just have to arrest you. And once you're in custody, the documents disappear, the investigation dies, and Garrett wins. We have to warn Webb. Webb's in danger too. If Garrett knows you brought him evidence." A gunshot rang out somewhere in the distance. Clara and Harold stared at each other. "The courthouse," Harold breathed. "My God, they're going after Webb." They ran. The streets of Helena were dark and empty, the cold biting at Clara's lungs as she sprinted toward the courthouse. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities. Webb dead, the documents destroyed, everything they'd worked for turned to ash. They reached the courthouse to find it ablaze. Flames poured from the second-floor windows right where the clerk's office had been. People were running, shouting, forming bucket lines that seemed pitifully inadequate against the inferno. "No!" Clara screamed. "No, no, no! The documents! Where's Webb? We have to find Webb!" She pushed through the crowd, searching desperately for the elderly clerk. He wasn't among the onlookers, wasn't anywhere. "Miss Whitmore!" Clara spun. A young man in a deputy's uniform stood behind her, his face streaked with soot. "Mr. Webb asked me to find you. He's alive, got out before the fire spread, but he's hurt. They're taking him to the doctor's office on 3rd Street. "The documents?" The deputy hesitated. "He managed to save some of them. But Miss Whitmore—" He glanced around nervously. "You need to get off the street. There are men looking for you, Garrett's men." Clara grabbed his arm. "Take me to Webb, now." They moved through back alleys and side streets, avoiding the main roads. Harold followed close behind, his hand on his pistol. The doctor's office was small and poorly lit. Webb lay on a narrow bed, his arm bandaged, his face ashen. "Miss Whitmore." His voice was weak but determined. "Thank God. I was afraid they'd gotten to you." "What happened?" "Two men broke into my office just after I'd finished copying the documents." Webb gestured to a leather satchel beside his bed. "I managed to get the copies out before they set the fire. The originals are gone, but the copies are legitimate, stamped and witnessed. They'll hold up in court." Clara's knees nearly buckled with relief. "You saved them." "I nearly died for them. They'd better be worth it." "They are. I promise you they are." "The judge." Webb struggled to sit up. "I sent word to Judge Morrison before the fire. He agreed to see you tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Don't be late." "Garrett's trying to have me arrested." "I know. Morrison knows too. He's placed you under his personal protection until the hearing." Webb lay back against the pillows. You've got one chance, Miss Whitmore. One chance to present your evidence and convince the judge that Garrett needs to be stopped. Don't waste it. I won't. She sat with Webb until he fell asleep, then left with Harold and the deputy. Where will you go? Harold asked. You can't go back to the boarding house. They'll be watching. I'll stay here. The doctor agreed to let me sleep in the back room. Clara. Harold. Go back to Prosperity. Warn Caleb. Tell him what's happening and make sure the children are safe. I'm not leaving you here alone. You have to. If Garrett's men are looking for me, they'll be looking for you too. And if something happens to both of us, there's no one to protect the family. Harold's face twisted with frustration, but he knew she was right. You're the bravest woman I've ever met, he said finally. Foolish as hell, but brave. Tell Caleb I love him. Tell the children I'm coming home. Tell them yourself, when this is over. He rode out before dawn. Clara watched him go, then turned to face the longest day of her life. The hearing room was smaller than Clara had expected, more like a private office than a courtroom. Judge Morrison sat behind a heavy desk, his face revealing nothing as Clara entered with Josiah Webb leaning heavily on her arm. Miss Whitmore, Mr. Webb. The judge gestured to chairs before his desk. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Clara helped Webb into his seat and took her own, clutching the leather satchel of documents like a lifeline. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence, Morrison said. The charges against Silas Garrett are serious. Forgery, fraud, attempted theft. If proven, these crimes carry significant prison sentences. They can be proven, Your Honor. The documents? I've seen the documents. What I need now is context. Morrison leaned forward. Tell me everything, Miss Whitmore. From the beginning. Clara talked for over an hour. She told him about arriving at the Montgomery cabin, about Caleb's injury, and the children's desperate situation. She told him about discovering the debt, about Harold's telegraph, about the discrepancies in the loan documents. She told him about Garrett's threats, the night attack on the cabin, the fire at the courthouse. Through it all, Morrison listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Mr. Webb, he said finally, in your professional opinion, are these documents authentic? They are, Your Honor. I verified them personally against our territorial records before. Webb's voice caught. Before the fire. And you're willing to testify to that in a formal proceeding? I am. Morrison nodded slowly. Miss Whitmore, I'm going to be frank with you. Silas Garrett is one of the most powerful men in Montana Territory. He has friends in high places, politicians, businessmen, even some of my fellow judges. Taking him down will not be easy, and it will not be without consequences. I understand. Do you really? Morrison's eyes bored into hers. If we proceed with this investigation, Garrett will use every weapon at his disposal. He'll attack your reputation, your character, your past. He'll dig up every mistake you've ever made and parade it before the public. Are you prepared for that? Clara thought of Philadelphia. Of the fiancé who'd betrayed her, the colleagues who'd abandoned her, the life that had crumbled in her hands. I've already survived that once, Your Honor. I can survive it again. And the Montgomery family, are they prepared? They've already lost a wife and mother. They've already fought off armed men trying to burn their home. They've already survived 3 days alone with a dead woman and no food. Clara's voice was steady. They're the strongest people I've ever met. They can survive anything. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Very well. I'm issuing a warrant for Silas Garrett's arrest effective immediately. He'll be brought to Helena and held for trial. Clara's heart soared. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Morrison's face was grave. Garrett won't go quietly, and even with a warrant arresting him will be dangerous. He has loyal men, and he has resources. Then send enough men to overwhelm him. I intend to. But Miss Whitmore. Morrison leaned forward. There's something else you should know. Something that came to light during my preliminary investigation. What is it? The judge hesitated. The woman who died at the Montgomery cabin, Agatha Perkins. You said her heart gave out. That's what we believed, yes. I had the territorial physician examine the reports. He found irregularities. Clara's blood went cold. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggest Mrs. Perkins didn't die of natural causes. Morrison's voice was heavy. The kind that suggest she was poisoned. For a moment, Clara couldn't breathe. Poisoned, but that would mean someone wanted her dead. Someone who knew that without her, the Montgomery children would be vulnerable. Someone who might have hoped that Caleb Montgomery wouldn't make it back from his trip. Garrett. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. He killed her. He killed that old woman so the children would be alone. I can't prove it. Not yet. But the timing is suspicious, and Garrett had motive. Clara's hands were shaking. All this time they'd thought Agatha's death was a tragedy, a terrible coincidence. But if Morrison was right, if Garrett had murdered her, he's a monster. Yes, he is. And now you understand why we have to stop him. Morrison stood. Go home, Miss Whitmore. Go back to Prosperity and wait for word. I'll send men to arrest Garrett within the week. I should stay. I should be here when you should be with that family. They need you more than I do. Morrison walked her to the door. You've done well, better than I expected. But the legal work is mine now. Your job is to keep those children safe until this is over. Clara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Thank you, she said again, for believing us. Thank you for having the courage to come forward. Most people would have given up long ago. Clara thought of Thomas's fierce determination, of Caleb's unwavering love for his children, of Benjamin asking if she was going to be his new mama. I had good teachers, she said. The ride back to Prosperity felt endless. Clara pushed her horse as hard as she dared, desperate to get home to see Caleb and the children, to tell them that they'd won. Or at least that they were winning. She was still a mile from the cabin when she saw the smoke. Her heart stopped. Not again. Please God, not again. She kicked her horse into a gallop, fear choking her as she raced toward home. But as she crested the final hill, she realized the smoke wasn't coming from the cabin. It was coming from the chimney. Normal smoke. Cooking smoke. Clara nearly wept with relief. She reached the yard just as Thomas came running out of the barn. Miss Clara, you're back. I'm back. She dismounted and caught him in a fierce hug. I'm back and it's over. We won. We won. You mean Mr. Garrett? There's a warrant for his arrest. They're going to Helena to take him into custody. Thomas's face transformed. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked like a child, a happy, relieved child, who could finally stop being afraid. Papa, come quick! He ran toward the cabin. Miss Clara's back. She says we won. The cabin door flew open, and suddenly Clara was surrounded. Children everywhere. Benjamin still moving carefully because of his stitches. Hannah clinging to her skirt. Grace and Samuel talking over each other. Elizabeth holding baby. Catherine, all of them crying and laughing and asking questions she couldn't answer fast enough. And then Caleb was there, pushing through his children on his crutches, his face alight with joy and love and something that looked like wonder. Clara. Caleb. He kissed her in front of everyone. The children erupted in giggles and cheers. Clara laughed against his lips, tears streaming down her face. You did it, he said when they finally broke apart. My God, woman, you actually did it. We did it. All of us. Is it really over? Garrett's really going to jail. There's a warrant for his arrest. Judge Morrison is sending men this week. Caleb let out a breath that seemed to come from his soul. I can't believe it. After all these years. There's more. Clara's expression sobered. Caleb, I need to tell you something. About Mrs. Perkins. She told him everything Morrison had said. About the poison, about Garrett's likely involvement, about the terrible truth that the woman they'd thought had died of natural causes had actually been murdered. Caleb's face went pale, then red with fury. He killed her. That son of a bitch killed her to get to my children. We can't prove it yet, but Morrison's investigating. It doesn't matter if we can prove it. I know. I know what he is. Caleb's hands clenched on his crutches. If the law doesn't handle him, I will. Caleb, no. Let the law work. That's the whole point of what we've done to prove that justice is possible even against men like Garrett. Justice. Caleb spat the word. What justice is there for Agatha Perkins? For her son Harold, who lost his mother because of Garrett's vendetta against me? Harold knows. I told him before I came here. He wants this done right, Caleb. He wants Garrett to face a trial to be publicly exposed for what he is. Clara took his hands. If you kill him, you become a murderer. Your children lose their father. Is that what you want? The anger in Caleb's eyes flickered, then faded into something like despair. No, of course not. Then let me handle this. Let the law handle it. For the children's sake. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. For the children. And for you. He pulled her close. I love you, Clara Whitmore. I love you too, Caleb Montgomery. When this is over, when Garrett's in prison and the farm is safe, will you marry me? Clara's heart soared. Are you proposing? I'm asking. Properly this time. Caleb lowered himself awkwardly onto one knee, his splinted leg jutting out to the side. I know I'm not much a broken-down rancher with 7 kids and more baggage than any man should carry. But I love you. My children love you, and I can't imagine facing another day without you by my side. Caleb. Clara Whitmore, will you marry me? The children had gathered around, watching with wide eyes. Even baby Catherine seemed to sense something important was happening. Clara looked at them, this family that had taken her in, that had given her purpose and meaning and love. This family that she'd fought for, risked everything for, crossed half a territory for. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Caleb, I'll marry you. The children exploded with joy. Benjamin threw his arms around Clara's waist. Hannah jumped up and down. The twins cheered. Elizabeth burst into tears, and even Thomas was grinning from ear to ear. Caleb struggled to his feet and kissed her again, and Clara thought her heart might burst with happiness. For the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Clara made a special dinner from the supplies Harold had left, and they ate together as a family. A real family. Not just people sharing a cabin, but people bound by love and commitment and hope. After the younger children were in bed, Clara sat with Caleb by the fire, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. When should we get married? She asked. Tomorrow if I had my way. Be serious. I am serious. Caleb pressed a kiss to her hair. But I suppose we should wait until Garrett's trial is over. Do this properly. What about the town? What will people say? Let them say whatever they like. I stopped caring about gossip the day I buried my wife. His arm tightened around her. All that matters is this family. You, me, the children. The rest of the world can go hang. Clara smiled. You have a way with words, Caleb Montgomery. I have a way with you, Clara Whitmore. He tilted her face up and kissed her softly. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Why's that? Because we've got a wedding to plan, and 7 children to convince that their lives are about to change for the better. Clara laughed. I think they're already convinced. Maybe. But I want to make sure they know, all of them, that this family is forever now. No more fear. No more uncertainty. Just love. Just love, Clara echoed. She fell asleep in his arms, dreaming of a future she'd never dared to imagine. 3 days later, word came from Helena. Clara was in the yard helping Thomas with the horses when a rider appeared on the horizon. Her heart clenched with fear, fear that something had gone wrong, that Garrett had escaped, that their victory had been snatched away at the last moment. But as the rider drew closer, she recognized him. Judge Morrison himself, flanked by 2 deputies. "Miss Whitmore." The judge dismounted, his face solemn. "I have news." "Is it over? Did they arrest him?" "They tried." Morrison removed his hat. "Silas Garrett is dead." Clara's legs nearly gave out. "Dead? How?" "He resisted arrest. Drew a weapon on the marshals. They had no choice but to shoot." "So it's over. Really over." "It's over." Morrison handed her a folded document. "The Territorial Court has ruled in favor of Caleb Montgomery. The fraudulent documents have been voided, the debt declared invalid. The Montgomery property is free and clear." Clara stared at the paper in her hands. Free and clear. After everything they'd been through, the fear, the fighting, the desperate journey to Helena, it was finally over. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." "Thank yourself, Miss Whitmore. You're the one who had the courage to stand up." Morrison put his hat back on. "I wish you and Mr. Montgomery all the happiness in the world. You've certainly earned it." He rode away, leaving Clara standing in the yard with the paper that represented their freedom. She found Caleb in the cabin, whittling a new toy for Benjamin. He looked up when she entered, and his face changed at her expression. "Clara, what is it?" She handed him the document without a word. Caleb read it once, then again, then a third time, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "It's over," he said finally. "My God, it's really over. Garrett's dead. He resisted arrest." "Good." The word came out flat, final. "I know that's not Christian of me, but good. After what he did to Martha, to Agatha, to my children, he deserved worse than a bullet. He can't hurt us anymore. That's what matters." Caleb set down the paper and pulled Clara into his arms. For a long moment they just held each other, letting the relief wash over them like a wave. "We're free," Caleb murmured against her hair. "After all this time, we're actually free." "We're free," Clara agreed. "Now let's go tell the children." The celebration that followed put their earlier joy to shame. Thomas whooped loud enough to scare the horses. Benjamin demanded to know if this meant they could keep the farm forever. Hannah asked if she could have a pony now that they weren't poor anymore. Grace and Samuel immediately started arguing about what color to paint the barn. Elizabeth, practical as always, asked the most important question. "Does this mean Miss Clara is definitely staying?" Everyone went quiet, looking at Clara expectantly. She knelt down to meet Elizabeth's eyes. "I'm staying, forever. Your father asked me to marry him, and I said yes. So you'll be our mama." Hannah's voice was barely a whisper. "If you'll have me." Hannah threw herself into Clara's arms. "We'll have you. We'll have you forever." The other children piled on, and Clara found herself at the bottom of a pile of laughing, crying, overjoyed children. And for the first time in her life, she knew she was home. The wedding was set for the first Sunday in spring. Clara had wanted something simple, but the town of Prosperity had other ideas. Word of what she'd done traveling to Helena, confronting Garrett, saving the Montgomery family, had spread through the territory like wildfire. People who had once avoided Caleb now stopped by with gifts. Women who had never spoken to Clara suddenly wanted to help with the dress, the flowers, the food. "I don't understand," Clara said to Caleb one evening 3 weeks before the wedding. "These people ignored you for 2 years. Now they act like we're old friends." "That's small towns for you. They follow power." Caleb pulled her close. "Garrett had power, so they followed him. Now he's gone, and they need someone new to follow." "I don't want followers. I just want peace." "You'll have it. After the wedding, things will settle down." He kissed her forehead. "Just a few more weeks." But peace, it seemed, was not ready to come. 3 days before the wedding, a stranger rode into Prosperity. Clara was at the general store with Elizabeth picking up the last supplies for the ceremony when the man walked through the door. He was tall, well-dressed with dark hair going gray at the temples and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cultured and Eastern. "I'm looking for a woman named Clara Whitmore. I was told she might be here." Clara's blood went cold. She knew that voice. Knew it like she knew her own heartbeat. It had haunted her dreams for months after Philadelphia, whispering lies and promises that had turned to ash. "Robert?" Elizabeth looked up at her confused. "Miss Clara, do you know this man?" Robert Thornton turned, and his face broke into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Clara. My God, I've been looking everywhere for you. What are you doing here?" "I came to find you, to apologize, to explain." He moved toward her, hands outstretched. "Clara, you have to believe me. Everything that happened in Philadelphia was a terrible misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Clara's voice rose. "You had a wife, children. You lied to me for a year. You destroyed my reputation. You called me hysterical in front of everyone we knew." I know, and I'm so sorry." Robert's face was a mask of contrition. "But things have changed. Margaret, my wife, she passed away 6 months ago. I'm a free man now, Clara. We can start over." Clara stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Start over?" "Yes. Come back to Philadelphia with me. I'll restore your reputation, give you everything you ever wanted. We can be married just like we planned." "Miss Clara." Elizabeth's small hand slipped into hers. "Who is this man?" Clara looked down at the girl, Caleb's daughter. Her daughter now, and felt something shift inside her. The fear she'd carried since Philadelphia, the shame, the doubt, it all fell away, replaced by a certainty as solid as stone. "This man," she said clearly, "is nobody. He's from my past, and he has no place in my future." Robert's mask slipped, revealing the anger beneath. "Clara, don't be foolish. I traveled 2,000 miles to find you. The least you can do is hear me out. I've heard enough. You need to leave." "I'm not leaving without you." "Yes." A new voice joined the conversation. "You are." Clara turned to find Thomas standing in the doorway, his young face hard with determination. Behind him, Harold Perkins and 3 other men from town had gathered. "This is the man?" Harold asked Clara. "The one from Philadelphia?" "This is him." "Then I think you'd better go, mister." Harold's hand rested on the pistol at his hip. "Miss Clara's spoken for. She's marrying Caleb Montgomery in 3 days, and she doesn't need any trouble from her past showing up to ruin things." Robert's eyes darted from face to face, calculating odds. "This is absurd. Clara, tell these people who I am." "I already did." Clara stepped forward, putting herself between Robert and Elizabeth. "You're nobody. You're a liar and a cheat, and the worst mistake I ever made. But you're also the reason I came west, the reason I found this town, the reason I walked into a cabin with a loaf of bread and found a family who needed me." She lifted her chin. "So I suppose I should thank you. Without your betrayal, I never would have found my real life." Robert's face contorted with fury. "You'll regret this. You'll realize what you've given up and come crawling back." "I don't think so." Caleb's voice cut through like a blade. He stood at the edge of the gathered crowd, leaning on a cane now instead of crutches, his leg finally healing. His eyes were fixed on Robert with an intensity that made the Eastern man take a step back. "My future wife has asked you to leave. The people of this town have asked you to leave. Now I'm telling you." Caleb moved forward, each step deliberate. "Get out of Prosperity. Get out of Montana. And if I ever see your face again, if you ever come near Clara or my children, I will end you. Do you understand?" Robert's composure cracked completely. "You can't threaten me. I'm a respected businessman. I have connections. Your connections mean nothing here." Caleb stopped inches from Robert's face. Out here, a man is judged by his actions, and your actions have shown you to be a coward and a liar. Now leave, while you still can." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Robert turned and walked out of the store without another word. Clara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Caleb, are you all right?" "I'm fine. She laughed a wild sound halfway to tears. "I'm actually fine. I thought seeing him would destroy me, but it didn't. He's just a small, sad man who never deserved me in the first place." "No, he didn't." Caleb pulled her into his arms. "You deserve better. You deserve everything." "I have everything." Clara buried her face in his chest. "I have you. I have the children. I have a home." "Pa—" Thomas approached hesitantly. "Is the bad man gone?" "He's gone, son. He's not coming back." "Good." Thomas's jaw was set. "If he does, I'll shoot him myself." "Thomas—" Clara pulled back, shocked, despite herself. "What? He hurt you. He made you cry. I could tell even though you were trying not to. Anyone who hurts our family deserves shooting." Caleb put a hand on his son's shoulder. "I appreciate the sentiment, but let's keep the shooting to a minimum. Your new mama would prefer we solve problems with words when possible." "Words didn't make him leave. You threatening him made him leave." "That's not entirely wrong." Caleb glanced at Clara, a smile tugging at his lips. "But the point stands. Words first, shooting last." "Fine," Thomas muttered. "But if he comes back—" "He won't." Clara knelt down to meet Thomas's eyes. "And even if he did, it wouldn't matter. He can't hurt me anymore. None of my past can hurt me anymore." She touched his cheek. "Because I have a future now, with you and your father and your brothers and sisters." Thomas's face softened. "You really mean that?" "I really do. Even though we're a lot of trouble. Especially because you're a lot of trouble." Clara smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The wedding day arrived with clear skies and a warmth that felt like a blessing. Clara woke before dawn, too nervous to sleep. She lay in her narrow bed in the storage room. Soon she'd share Caleb's room, their room, and listen to the cabin come alive around her. Children's feet on floorboards. Caleb's voice low and gentle. The crackle of a fire being stoked. Her family. Her home. "Miss Clara." A soft knock at the door. "Are you awake?" "Come in, Hannah." The door opened, and Hannah crept in still in her nightgown. "I couldn't sleep. I'm too excited." "Me too." "Are you scared?" Clara considered the question. "A little, but mostly I'm happy. I was scared when Mama married Papa. I don't remember it, but Thomas told me." Hannah climbed onto the bed beside Clara. "He said I cried the whole time." "You were just a baby." "I know. But Thomas said it was because I knew Mama was important. That she was going to change everything." Hannah snuggled close. "Are you going to change everything too?" "I already have, sweetheart. And so have you." Clara wrapped an arm around the little girl. "We've all changed each other. For better. For better. Definitely for better." They lay together until the sun came up, and then the chaos of wedding preparations swept them away. Elizabeth took charge of the younger children, making sure everyone was washed and dressed and presentable. Thomas helped Caleb with his suit, a new one bought with money from the first furniture sale. Harold Perkins arrived early to set up chairs in the yard, followed by what seemed like half the town, all carrying food and flowers and good wishes. Mrs. Morrison, the preacher's wife, came to help Clara dress. "You look beautiful, dear," she said, fastening the last button on Clara's simple white dress. "Caleb's a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one." "I think you're both lucky. And those children—" Mrs. Morrison's eyes misted over. "They've needed a mother for so long. I'm so glad they found you." "They found me," Clara agreed. "That's exactly what happened. I didn't find them. They found me." Sometimes that's how the best families come together. Not by blood, but by need. by love. Clara nodded, too emotional to speak. The ceremony was simple and perfect. Clara walked down the makeshift aisle on Harold Perkins's arm, past neighbors and friends and strangers who'd become allies. At the end, Caleb waited, his children arranged around him like an honor guard. Baby Catherine was in Elizabeth's arms, sleeping peacefully. Benjamin stood proud and tall, fully recovered from his surgery. The twins Grace and Samuel held hands as always. Hannah clutched a basket of wildflowers she'd gathered that morning. And Thomas stood right next to his father, looking every inch the young man he was becoming. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" the preacher asked. "I do," Harold said, his voice thick. "On behalf of all who've come to love her." Clara took her place beside Caleb, and his hand found hers immediately. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Caleb Montgomery and Clara Whitmore. Marriage is a sacred bond not to be entered into lightly, but with full understanding of the joys and challenges it brings." Clara barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at Caleb, at the love in his eyes, the slight trembling of his hand in hers, the way he seemed unable to stop smiling. "Do you, Caleb, take Clara to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do." Caleb's voice was steady and sure. "I do with all my heart." "And do you, Clara, take Caleb to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" Clara looked at her family, the children who'd become hers, the man who'd given her purpose, the community that had embraced her. She thought of Philadelphia, of Robert, of the life she'd lost. And she realized that losing that life had been the greatest gift she'd ever received. "I do," she said, "now and forever. Then by the power vested in me by the Montana Territory, I pronounce you husband and wife." The preacher smiled. "Caleb, you may kiss your bride." Caleb pulled her close and kissed her deep and true and full of promise. Around them, the crowd erupted in cheers. The children rushed forward, surrounding them in a tangle of arms and laughter and tears. "We're a real family now," Benjamin shouted. "A real official family." "We were always a real family," Thomas said, but he was smiling. "Now we're just legal." "Can I call you Mama now?" Hannah asked, tugging at Clara's dress. "Not Miss Clara, Mama." Clara knelt down, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, sweetheart, you can call me Mama." "Mama," Hannah said, testing the word. "Mama, Mama." The other children took up the cry, and Clara found herself surrounded by voices calling her the name she'd never thought she'd hear. "Mama, Mama, Mama." Caleb helped her to her feet, his arm around her waist. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Montgomery." "I've been part of this family since the day I walked through your door with a loaf of bread," Clara said. "The wedding just makes it official." "Then let's celebrate." Caleb kissed her again. "We've got a whole life ahead of us." The celebration lasted until long after dark. There was food, more food than Clara had ever seen in one place, and music from a fiddler who'd come all the way from Helena. There was dancing and laughter and stories, and through it all, Clara felt like she was floating. Late in the evening, she found herself standing at the edge of the crowd watching her family. Caleb was teaching Hannah to dance, lifting her tiny feet onto his boots so she could follow his steps. Thomas had taken over baby Catherine, walking her around the yard when she fussed. Elizabeth was helping the twins with their dessert patient as always. Benjamin was showing off his surgery scar to a group of impressed boys from town. "You did good, Ed." Clara turned to find Harold Perkins beside her, a cup of cider in his hand. "I didn't do anything. This family saved itself." "That's not what I saw." Harold's eyes were soft. I saw a woman who walked into a desperate situation and refused to walk away. I saw someone who faced down bullies and traveled across the territory to fight for people she barely knew. I saw courage and determination and love. He raised his cup. To you, Clara Montgomery, the bravest woman in Montana. Clara clinked her cup against his. I'm not brave. I was terrified the whole time. That's what makes it brave. Harold smiled. Being afraid and doing it anyway. That's the only real courage there is. Someone told me that once. Clara looked at Thomas, remembering their conversation on the ride to town what felt like a lifetime ago. A very wise young man. He takes after his father, and his new mother. Clara felt tears prick her eyes again. Harold, I never thanked you properly. For everything you did, the horses, the telegraph coming to Helena. You thanked me by saving this family. Harold's voice was gruff. My mother died in that cabin. She loved those children like her own grandkids, knowing they're safe, that they've got a real mother again. He cleared his throat. That's thanks enough. I wish I could have known her. She would have loved you. Harold squeezed her arm. Now go. Your husband's looking for you. Clara made her way back to Caleb, who swept her into a dance the moment she reached him. Where did you go? Just thinking. Appreciating. Appreciating what? Everything. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. This day. This family. This life. It's a good life. The best. They danced in silence for a while, moving slowly, even as the music picked up tempo around them. Clara. Caleb's voice was soft. Thank you. For what? For not giving up. On me, on the children, on any of it. He pulled back to look at her. When you walked through that door with your bread and your broken wagon, I was ready to die. I'd made peace with it. But you refused to let me go. You didn't make peace with anything. You crawled 5 miles on a broken leg to get back to your children. Because I couldn't leave them alone. But living, really living again. He shook his head. I'd given up on that. Until you. Caleb, let me finish. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. You gave me hope, Clara. You gave my children a mother. You gave this family a future. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. You already deserve me. You deserved me from the first moment we met. Clara cupped his face in her hands. We deserved each other. 2 broken people who found a way to be whole together. I love you, Clara Montgomery. I love you, Caleb Montgomery. Now and forever. They kissed again as the music swelled around them, and Clara felt something settle in her chest, a peace so profound it was almost painful. She was home. Finally, truly home. 5 years passed like a dream. The Montgomery Ranch prospered beyond anything Caleb had imagined. His furniture business grew, providing steady income that supplemented the horse breeding and cattle. Clara continued teaching riding to the schoolhouse in Prosperity 3 days a week, while the children grew and learned and flourished. Thomas turned 15 and became his father's right hand on the ranch. He'd grown tall and strong with Martha's determined jaw and Caleb's steady eyes. He still didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. Elizabeth at 13 had become the household's second mother. She helped Clara with the younger children, excelled at her studies, and had developed a talent for medicine that made Dr. Morrison hint about apprenticeships. Benjamin, now 10, had fully recovered from his surgery and become the family's adventurer. He was always exploring, always climbing, always coming home with scraped knees and wild stories. His brush with death had taught him to embrace life with both hands. The twins, Grace and Samuel, were 9 and inseparable as ever. Grace had inherited Clara's practicality, while Samuel had developed an artist's eye. They balanced each other perfectly. Hannah, at 9, had become the family's sunshine. She remembered Clara's first day vividly and loved to retell the story to anyone who would listen. "Mama came with bread," she would say, and she never left. And baby Catherine, who was now 5, had no memory of life before Clara. To her, Clara had always been Mama, and the story of how they'd met was just another fairy tale. But the biggest change came 2 years after the wedding, when Clara gave birth to twins of her own, a boy and a girl named William and Rose. "9 children," Harold Perkins said when he came to see the babies. "You've got a full house now." "We've always had a full house," Clara replied. William cradled in one arm and Rose in the other. "Now it's just a little fuller." "You ever regret it? Coming west, I mean. Giving up your life in Philadelphia?" Clara looked around the cabin, expanded now with extra rooms for the growing family. She looked at her children, biological, and chosen, all gathered to meet their new siblings. She looked at Caleb, who was watching her with the same love in his eyes that she'd seen on their wedding day. "Philadelphia wasn't a life," she said. "It was a waiting room. I was waiting for my real life to begin." She smiled at Harold. "It began the day I walked through that door with a loaf of bread." On a quiet evening in the spring of 1883, Clara sat on the porch with Caleb watching their children play in the yard. William and Rose, now 3, were toddling after their older siblings. Catherine was teaching Hannah a clapping game. The twins were arguing about something as always. Benjamin was showing Thomas a bird's nest he'd found. Elizabeth was reading in the shade Baby Number 10, a surprise that had arrived just 6 months ago, a boy they'd named James, sleeping in a basket beside her. 10 children, Caleb said, shaking his head. "When I met you, I thought 4 was overwhelming. You adapted. We adapted." He took her hand. "Together. Do you ever think about the day we met?" "Every day." Caleb smiled. "I was dying in the snow, and an angel appeared with bread." "I wasn't an angel. I was a desperate woman with a broken wagon and nowhere to go. You were exactly what we needed. What I needed." He squeezed her hand. "I think Martha sent you." Clara looked at him surprised. In all their years together, Caleb rarely spoke of Martha. The children did. They kept her memory alive with stories and pictures and visits to her grave on the hill. But Caleb held his grief privately close to his chest. "You think so?" "I know so. She knew I couldn't raise those children alone. She knew I'd need help." His voice was thick. "So she sent you. The answer to a prayer I didn't even know how to say." Caleb. "I love you, Clara. I loved Martha, and I'll always love her. But loving you doesn't diminish that. It expands it." He pulled her close. "My heart is bigger because of you. Because of what you've given me. What you've given all of us." Clara leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "I came west to escape my past. I never expected to find a future." "But you did." "I found everything." She looked at their children, all 10 of them hers in every way that mattered. "I found more than everything." "Mama!" Hannah came running up, her face flushed with excitement. "Thomas says there's going to be a meteor shower tonight. Can we stay up and watch? It's a school night." "Please, Mama. Please, please, please." Clara looked at Caleb, who shrugged helplessly. "Don't look at me. You know I can't say no to her." "Fine," Clara said, trying to look stern. "But only until midnight, and everyone has to finish their chores first." Hannah cheered and ran off to spread the news. Within seconds, the yard erupted in excited chatter. "You're too soft on them," Caleb teased. "I learned it from you." "Fair point." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their family, until Thomas approached with a question in his eyes. "Ma, can I talk to you for a minute?" Clara's heart swelled at the word. It had taken Thomas 3 years to call her anything other than Miss Clara. The day he'd first said "Ma" had been one of the happiest of her life. "Of course." "What is it?" Thomas sat down on the porch steps, his long legs stretched out before him. At 15, he was nearly as tall as his father with the same quiet strength. I've been thinking about what I want to do. With my life, I mean. And what have you decided? I want to study law, become a lawyer. He glanced at her. Like the ones who helped us with Garrett. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Thomas, I know it means leaving. Going to school back east, probably. But I keep thinking about what you did, how you used the law to save us, to save our home. I want to do that for other families. Families who don't have someone to fight for them. Your father and I would be so proud. We already are proud. You don't think it's wrong? Leaving the ranch, leaving the family. I think it's exactly right. Clara reached out and took his hand, something she never could have done in those first weeks when he'd flinched away from any touch. You've spent your whole life taking care of others. It's time to build something for yourself. I'll come back, after school. I'll set up Practiced in Prosperity, help people here. I know you will. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then softly, Ma, I never thanked you. For everything. You don't have to thank me. You're my son. But I'm not. Not really. Martha was my mother. Martha gave you life. Clara interrupted gently. She raised you for the first 8 years. She loved you with everything she had. Nothing I do will ever erase that, and I would never want it to. She squeezed his hand. But I've loved you for the past 7 years. I've worried about you, fought for you, prayed for you. I've watched you grow from a scared boy trying to be a man into an actual man who makes me proud every single day. Her voice cracked. You're my son, Thomas. Maybe not by blood, but by everything that matters. Thomas's eyes were bright. I used to hate you. Did you know that? I suspected. I thought you were trying to replace her, trying to make us forget. I would never. I know that now. He took a deep breath. You didn't make us forget her. You made us remember her better. You made space for her memory while still giving us a future. He met her eyes. That's why I want to be a lawyer. Because you taught me that fighting for people isn't about erasing the past. It's about protecting the future. Clara couldn't speak. She just pulled him into a hug, and Thomas, her son, hugged her back. That night, the whole family gathered on the hill behind the house to watch the meteor shower. They spread blankets on the grass near Martha's grave, and Clara watched as the children arranged themselves in their usual configurations. Twins together, older kids watching younger ones. Babies passed from arm to arm. Caleb settled beside her, his arm around her waist. Happy. Completely. No regrets. Not a single one. A meteor streaked across the sky, and the children gasped in delight. Even baby James, too young to understand, waved his tiny fists at the light. Make a wish, Mama, Hannah called. You have to make a wish? Clara closed her eyes. But no wish came because what could she possibly wish for? She had everything. A husband who loved her, children who needed her, a home that sheltered her, a community that embraced her. She had a life. What did you wish for? Caleb asked. Nothing. Clara opened her eyes and smiled at him. I'm all out of wishes. They've all already come true. Another meteor fell, then another, and the children's excited voices filled the night. Clara leaned against her husband and watched the sky rain light surrounded by the family she'd found when she thought she'd lost everything. 7 years ago, she'd walked into a stranger's cabin with nothing but a loaf of bread and a broken heart. Now she had 10 children, a thriving ranch, and a love so deep it sometimes took her breath away. The meteor shower continued until past midnight, and one by one the children fell asleep on their blankets. Caleb and Clara carried them inside, tucking each one into bed, pressing kisses to each forehead. Finally, they stood in the doorway of their bedroom, the room they'd shared for 7 years, the room where they'd built their life. Thank you, Caleb said softly. For what? For not giving up, for fighting for us. He pulled her close. For being exactly what this family needed. You saved me too, you know. Clara rested her head against his chest. I was lost when I found you. Broken. Running from everything I'd ever known. And now I'm found. Now I'm whole. She looked up at him. Now I'm home. Caleb kissed her slow and sweet, and Clara melted into him, into this life she'd never expected, this love she'd never thought possible. Some people spend their whole lives searching for where they belong. Clara had found it in a cabin in Montana, surrounded by children who needed her, and a man who loved her, built on a foundation of bread and hope, and the stubborn refusal to give up. And she would never, ever let it go. Because home isn't a place you find, it's a place you build, one act of love at a time, until the walls are strong enough to weather any storm. Clara Montgomery had built her home, and it would stand forever.